What's up, family? Welcome to episode 8 of Stack Sats or Die Trying. This is the Bitcoin Show brought to you by the Hood. My name is Jimmy, your host as always. Shout out to everybody who supports the show, man. The show is growing. I appreciate all the feedback. Shout out to all the audio listeners that's picking up as well. And I just want to say thank you because I know a lot of times I'm sharing PowerPoint presentations, so it may not come across the best in audio, but we got a lot of audio listeners and it is appreciated. Shout out to those that listen on Fountain and Stream Sats. Definitely appreciate it. But anyway, man, let's get right into it. Got something I want to share with you today. So if you are listening to the audio, you may want to watch the video, but I'll try to make it understandable nonetheless. And today's episode is titled Living a Bitcoin Lifestyle. Now, I want to start this off by saying that this isn't necessarily for everyone. I understand that I'm a bit extreme as it pertains to adopting and living a Bitcoin lifestyle. I've been in the space for a number of years at this point. So for me, this is different than someone who's just coming to Bitcoin, just learning. Maybe they got their foray via the ETF, or maybe it's because we've been, kind of in a bull cycle that people are coming into the space, and this may not be for everybody, but this is a place that I think a lot of us should get to. And I'll explain why in a little bit, but, today's episode is called Living a Bitcoin Lifestyle, and it is episode 8 of this specific project, which is called Stack Sats or Die Trying. So with that being said, let's get to it. As always, this is not investment advice. Anything I say here is for educational, informational purposes only. This is not about trading, and all trading does involve risk, and I am not your fiduciary. I'm sharing my lifestyle, my journey through the world of Bitcoin with our audience, as well as anyone who tunes in for this specific episode or any episode in this series. So it's not investment advice. Definitely want to make sure I say that. But I want to start with talking about the idea of getting on zero. So the idea of getting on zero, and I'll give you the definition of getting on zero in a second, is something that I've been striving to do for a while. I am finally 100% there in terms of my personal finances of getting on zero. Some may find this a bit extreme. I don't find it extreme at all. I actually find it the smartest thing for me to do, and I'll explain why. But, and by the way, this definition comes from getonzerofiat.com, which is a website. I just like their definition. So instead of, trying to recreate it, I'm going to share their definition with you, which is to get on zero means you don't hold any fiat. You will use it as a payment method to receive or send money with people not yet on the Bitcoin standard, but you switch into Bitcoin as soon as you get fiat. You switch into fiat only when you are paying someone else. So this is where I am. I hold zero fiat. I don't have any money in the bank. I don't have any fiat whatsoever. I'm living a Bitcoin lifestyle, and I'm living on a Bitcoin standard. What does that mean? That means that any sort of money that I get in terms of my value that I provide to an organization or a person that I get in the form of a paycheck, it'll come to me in fiat, immediately convert it into Satoshis. Now, obviously, everyone I do business with isn't on the Bitcoin standard. So there are things such as my mortgage, personal mortgage. I don't have a car note, so that's not a thing. But just regular bills, utility bills, and by the way, I try to minimize bills as well. One of the things about living a Bitcoin standard is you start to understand the value of your currency. There's a difference when you're spending fiat. It's losing value. It's a melting ice cube. So you just get rid of it. But when you have a currency that's your base currency that gains value over time, it actually makes you think more about the purchases that you make, right? And it's not that I don't have any vices. I'm not perfect. I love smartphones. So I'm always with the newest smartphone. I love first class travel. Those are my two vices, right? I'll say I have two vices. I'm not the most well-dressed man. I wear Stack Sats and Bitcoin t-shirts and hoodies. That's my uniform per se. So I don't spend a lot of money on clothing. I would say my vices are probably first class travel, because I love to travel and I love flying first class. Some consider it a waste. I enjoy it. I love the newest smartphone, whether that's iPhone or Android. I usually have both. So that's my vice. But outside of those things, I don't spend a lot of money. And, I spend money to survive, obviously, food, shelter, things of that nature. But my money is in Satoshis and always is in Satoshis until it's time to pay a bill. So some will ask, how does that work? I'm actually putting together a comprehensive course, and I'm probably going to share it with our private membership group first, which is NDC Strategy. For those who don't know, you can find more information about that in the description. I'm not trying to sell anything here, but and for those who don't know, another thing that I do is I do a lot of consulting as it pertains to Bitcoin. So I do consulting, but when I do consulting, I get paid in Bitcoin. So part of my consultation, when I sit down with people and show them how to set up wallets, how to live this lifestyle, how to use some of the specific tools within Bitcoin, is, I have to get paid in sats. And the reason is because it's part of their education in terms of being able to trade value back and forth via sats. So that part I don't have to worry about. Now, there are tools that I use. Just to give you an example, like Strike is something that I use. Strike will take in, say you have a paycheck, Strike will take it in and automatically convert that to sats for you. So, but there are a lot of specific tools that I use that help me get on zero. The biggest tool is probably, I would say, if I had to pick like the top 3 quote unquote Bitcoin companies, it'll probably be these 3. Fold being number 1. And then number 2 or 3, you can flip-flop them either way. I like Strikers and Swan, those 2. But Fold is probably number 1, and I'm going to explain why. Fold is what enabled me to get on zero. Now, today's episode is titled Living a Bitcoin Lifestyle. And the 2 different ideas that I'm going to share in this episode may sound contradictory, but at the end, I'll bring it all together to kind of make it make sense, or at least it makes sense to me. Maybe that still doesn't make sense to you. So for those that listen to the audio, what I'm talking about right now is the idea of getting on zero in my slide. And I'll repeat the slide, which comes from the definition comes from the website, getonzerofiat.com. It talks about the idea of getting on zero, and zero means you hold 0 fiat. So to get on zero means you don't hold any fiat. You will use it as a payment method to receive or send money with people not yet on the Bitcoin standard. But you switch into Bitcoin as soon as you get fiat. You switch into fiat only when you are paying someone else. Now, here's why Fold allowed me to kind of do that. Fold has one of their newest features where you can buy Bitcoin on Fold, right? And for those who don't know, Fold is a debit card, but it also gives you a bank account through Sutton Bank. And it allows you to go back and forth between Bitcoin, right? And then money, actual fiat on your Visa card. The beauty of that is this. So they also will send you, the information you need in terms of when you're trading back and forth in case there's a taxable event. And I know a lot of people are like, well, man, that's too much as it pertains to taxes, right? So I have a different perspective on taxes, right? I don't mind paying taxes. Now, obviously, I try to minimize the amount I have to pay, but that means that I'm making money, right? So Sam won his piece, get your piece and get away from me. But with that being said, the idea of swapping back and forth makes it simple for me to now literally get on zero. So I keep all of my money in Bitcoin, all of it. So when it comes to time to pay a bill, let's just say for argument's sake, I have to pay my cell phone bill. I'll take the money out of Bitcoin, swap it into the Visa card, boom, pay the cell phone bill, is done. My money only turns into fiat when it's time to pay someone, as the definition says, not yet on the Bitcoin standard. But again, you value money different when your money is actually increasing in value. So it stops a lot of frivolous spending. Now, I do have what we like to call a trick budget, right? So I budget money every month for me to do things that, it's my trick budget. It is what it is. If I want to go out, get a meal, you know what I mean? Like do whatever it is I want to do. I budget for that. So that's the one thing. So getting on zero is part of me living a Bitcoin lifestyle. Now, this may be extreme for a lot of people. You may not be ready to do that. But for me, it's one of the best things that I've ever done, literally living off of Bitcoin and living the Bitcoin standard. The reason that it's been so beneficial for me is because my whole perception of personal finance has shifted to the point where I don't have a lot of frivolous spending. I budget for things, and also my purchasing power is increasing, right? Because I consistently earn, and I earn, which is automatically flipped into Bitcoin, I have more purchasing power, right? Whether I earn through the work that I do in terms of analytics, or whether I earn through my consultation, or whatever I earn is automatically flipped. Our company, By the Hood, me and Corey have had the conversation. We're switching to keeping our all of our excess cash in Bitcoin, right? That's what we do now. So we're turning that company into a Bitcoin company, so to speak, where we get income into Buy the Hood for the various things we do under Buy the Hood. Our bills are paid, but everything else sits in Bitcoin, right? So we're turning our company into a Bitcoin company. And it's one of the best things that I've done personally. And I believe for the future is one of the best things we can do for our company, because we are gaining purchasing power. We are not losing purchasing power. So while a lot of people complain about the ability to pay for goods and services costing so much, for us is actually opposite. Some of these sats we bought when Bitcoin was 15,000 or 20,000, and now we're talking about over 70,000. But I believe we're just getting started. When Bitcoin is 500,000, these sats that I'm buying at 70,000, it's like my purchasing power will continue to be more. All right, so with that being said, let's move on in this quick presentation just to get an idea, right? So here's a tweet that I put out, right? So I like to share things from, the social sphere and the Bitcoin space. This is actually a tweet that I put out. It says, the new features from the Fold app has made the idea of #GetOnZero possible for me. I'm now 97% there. I tweeted this out a little while ago that I was 97% on Get On Zero. I'm probably at 100% now. I'm at 100% now. There's really nothing left that I have in fiat. And also, quick side note, one of the parts of getting on zero was closing the various bank accounts that I have. So I do still have a couple accounts open. I leave no money in them, and they're credit union accounts, right? And the reason I use those are because I do have like lines of credit that I don't owe any money on, but I like to keep them there just in case, I find some sort of project or something I can do to create more fiat. Create fiat that can then be flipped into sats. So I did keep a couple credit union accounts open, and I have one major bank account open, but I leave no money in them. But what's interesting is one of the accounts that I closed, and I closed approximately like 10 accounts. One of the accounts that I closed gave me such a rough time in closing the account that it just was further proof of why I made the move I want to make. The thing about Bitcoin is it's censorship resistant, which we talk about in previous episodes, and we'll continue to go deeper down that part of Bitcoin. But the thing that I love the most about it is it's permissionless, right? And here's what I mean by permissionless. When I close the account, I'm not going to name the bank because I don't want to badmouth this bank because, they have a mission and all that. But, actually F the banks. But with all that being said, I didn't use the bank in such a long time. I had just sat money there. And I went to close it. I gave them all my information. They made me write them a letter to get my own money. You hear what I said? They made me write them a letter of why I was closing my account to get my own money. So instead of me snapping on them and all that, I wrote the letter, got my money, closed the account immediately. But I was like, thank you. Because what you did is made me realize that what I was doing in terms of getting on zero is the right thing. The idea of being permissionless and controlling my value means so much to me. I sound like an R&B song. It means so much to me. Anyway, it means so much to me as someone who has went through the process of having their money frozen for something they didn't do. Told that story in a previous episode. Won't get into it. But the idea of controlling my value itself has value to me. So when people start to talk about the idea that Bitcoin isn't backed by nothing and it has no value, I can point to 2 pieces of real estate that I purchased because of Bitcoin. And now I'm literally living on Bitcoin. So it's kind of comical when I hear people say that when I'm living on Bitcoin. Anyway, so I put this tweet out talking about the idea of getting on zero, right? So shout to Fold, my favorite company. Fold actually quote tweeted me and said, it's happening, right? I got a conversation with the people from Fold about this because their idea of creating and by the way, this whole episode is not a commercial for Fold. It's deeper than that, but I wanted to use this for context. So in talking to them, one of the reasons they have that thing is because they want more people to get on zero. So this is part of their plan. Fold allows you to move swiftly. Now, they're not the only thing that I use because I use a lot of things on Lightning, which as of right now, Fold doesn't have, but I use a lot of Lightning products. And again, I'll get into that when I do the full course of living on Bitcoin. And I'll bring that to the podcast in the future as well, just to go tool by tool on what I use and how I use it. But Fold, I would say, is the primary catalyst for me being able to get on zero. So outside of this, another part of this whole tweet thread, which was interesting, came from Sahil. His Twitter is @SahilC number 0, and he had the round of applause. The reason I share this is because he helped me in this process to understand how it was possible to get on 0. One of the ideas, or one of the frameworks that he gave me, is looking at the bank as, kind of being an ACH node, right? Where you need it to kind of process certain things for people, like I said in the previous couple slides, who are not yet on the Bitcoin standard, but you can swap back and forth in order to do so. But what you'll end up finding is a lot of companies that are quote unquote on the Bitcoin standard give you the ability to kind of do your business. So there really is no need a lot of times to go into fiat at all. And he has an excellent episode of a podcast he did. It's a podcast called Talking in Bits, where he was their guest and he talked about the idea of getting on 0. I'm going to share that because that helped me along on my journey, right? So one of the things about Stack Sats or Die Trying as a show, a podcast that I bring weekly, is I am constantly learning and I'm sharing what I'm learning. So I don't know it all, right? In fact, there are people who are so much smarter than me in this space from a technical standpoint. But I do get the economics of it and I get the value proposition of it because that's my background, value. But I want to constantly learn. So the thing about Bitcoin, the other thing about Bitcoin I love is it makes you a student. So as I learn and as I come across these different things, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, whether it's social media posts that help me in my understanding, I want to share with my audience to kind of like help you have the understanding. Because to me, the thing about Bitcoin, which is such an important thing, is not just about the number go up. Although I know that's why a lot of you are here, because all you care about is you pumping your bags and your number going up. But I want people to get in the habit of learning. And what I will say is, since doing this show, maybe not everybody has taken that approach, but there are several people that have reached out to me that are learning more. And I appreciate the feedback. Specifically, shout out to my brother Omar, man. Omar now sends me articles and messages and things as he's learning and he's going down his rabbit hole. But he's not the only one. There are a number of people who do so. Shout out to Russell. A couple folks who've done so, but in seeing that approach, it lets me know that I'm on the right path in terms of creating this specific content. This isn't for everybody, but it's it's for Cuban links, man. Only built for Cuban links. But for those that get value out of this show and what I'm doing with this project, thank you for letting me know that you're getting value out of it. So continue to learn as I create these shows and go down this rabbit hole. Now, here's the thing that you may find contradictory to everything I just said, right? Tim Draper is a billionaire investor. He shared a tweet, and here's why I say this may be contradictory, but I'll bring it all together. So here's what his tweet says. Tim Draper says, see if you can figure this one out. I invested 300 BTC for 4% of a startup. They returned me 15 Bitcoin. 10 years later, in dollars, it was a 15x on my money, right? I'll reread that. You know what I'm saying? For those that are listening to the audio, the billionaire Tim Draper put out a tweet. He says, see if you can figure this one out. I invested 300 Bitcoin for 4% of a startup. They returned me 15 Bitcoin 10 years later. In dollars, it was a 15x on my money. So in dollars and cents, he made 15x on his money, but he put up 300 Bitcoin in order to get invested in this startup. He only got 15 back. Now, I was going to really dig into this and break this down, but I saw someone on Twitter who he broke it all the way down. I was like, so I'll just, I'll copy his tweets and share it. And that's Playman _ and Donov. I don't want to pronounce his name wrong. Apologize if I do. Playman Andonov. And it's at Playman, PLAMEN _ last name ANDONOV. Andonov. Playman Andonov. So he broke down Tim Draper. He says, Tim Draper lost 285 Bitcoin valued today at $20 million US. However, he also made a 15x return on his roughly $70,000 investment. How can one achieve an insane return of 15x, $1 million, and at the same time incur a negative 95%, $20 million loss? It's simple. When your money is not securely stored in Bitcoin, every investment will seem like a bad investment in time. It would have been easier and more profitable just to hodl. However, without external investments, world progress would come to a standstill. So we need these crazy people who will blow their Bitcoin on other investments. This, of course, will not last forever. It will last only as long as we are going parabolic on the adoption curve. Once we hit about 80 to 90% global adoption, these crazy returns will be over. At that time, Bitcoin will just become an index of global progress, the safest investment, a pure store of value. Everything else will be a bet. I can do it faster than the rest of the world. Maybe you can, maybe you cannot. Entrepreneurs will be rewarded tremendously for bettering the world. Today, however, life is much simpler. All you have to do is stay humble and stack sats. It's a dope breakdown. So basically what he's saying is, I'm not going to reread that whole thing because it was a long post. But what he's saying is, in dollars, he made 15 times his money. But because, he's living a Bitcoin lifestyle, he put up Bitcoin, 300 Bitcoin, he got 15 back. He could have just did better just holding on to those 300 Bitcoin, right? So the reason I say this is kind of contradictory to what I've been talking about in terms of living this lifestyle is that when you live a Bitcoin lifestyle, you are spending your Bitcoin to do certain things. But the reason that I think it's overall beneficial is because I've learned so much by adopting this lifestyle. Now, again, I apologize if you hear my neighbor's dog. He often does that. When he hears me, he starts to hear me go off with these bars. He starts to do that. But I've learned more adopting this lifestyle using the tools. It's helped my understanding of the value proposition of not only Bitcoin, the asset, but Bitcoin, the network. Because now I realize, what do I even need stinking fiat for? I don't need it. Only reason I need it is because some of you are on the same wavelength as me. Everybody else hasn't caught up. But the idea of gaining purchasing power is such a huge value proposition for me. The idea of being permissionless and not having to write letters, right? I talked last episode about I cashed out all of my precious metals that I own that I've built up, since 2008. So you're talking about what? 16 years of me buying metals, got rid of all of them. All of it's in Satoshis now. Even the friction that caused made me realize, like, yo, I'm doing the right thing. I like permissionless. I didn't have to worry about paying for storage, right? And it's not that I don't store my Bitcoin securely. I believe in multi-sig, cold storage, and things of that nature for my long-term holdings. But I also have the stuff that I'm more, spending day to day, which I use a Lightning Network for. We'll jump into the Lightning Network in a future episode. But the point I'm making is living this lifestyle, using the tools, setting up all the tech, running my own node. These things aren't necessarily done as a way to gain more money, but it's to have a better understanding. And because of this, now I am all. When I say I'm all in, I'm all in. So I just wanted to talk about living the Bitcoin lifestyle, the pluses, the minuses of it. Some things that you may not have thought about. The idea of this show is to share my journey, but also help you to just think about things in a different way, right? But when it comes to regular goods and services, if I'm buying a book, I can buy that with Bitcoin, right? If I'm buying meals, I could buy that with. I had amazing Jamaican food last night. Shout out to Ricky's Jamaican on Germantown Avenue. Fire jerk wings. I paid for it in sats. They didn't know I was paying for it in sats, but I paid for it in sats. So my end, it came in sats. They received the payment in dollars, right? And these are some of the tools that exist that allow me to do so. So most of everything I do, I can do with sats. I have no need for stinking fiat. I opt out of the system. I opt out of the system that takes away our purchasing power. That's a silent tax that causes wars, that causes harm to other humans. I'm just out of it. So in going through this journey and using these tools, again, makes me laugh at those who say, man, your Bitcoin isn't backed by anything. It has no value, blah, blah. You know all the nonsense you hear. It's doing nothing but stealing energy. All that FUD means absolutely nothing to me. You can't tell someone who lives off of Bitcoin that Bitcoin has no value. What you're saying, you can miss me with that. In fact, my money has more value than yours, right? because I'm sitting on sats that were purchased at $900. You know what I mean? We're at 70,000. Like, what are you talking? You know what I mean? You know, at the Jay-Z, I'm still spending money from 88. Well, not necessarily 88, but you know, I'm still spending money from 2016. So FOH. With all that being said, I hope you got some value from this episode. Working on some future episodes. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about in a future episode is the various wallets that I use. Shout out to my brother Jamil from Detroit, who asked questions about hot wallets versus cold wallets. The only reason I haven't got that completely finished yet is because I literally take security serious. So I don't keep everything right here where I'm at. So I want to gather everything to create this video to show the various types of wallets, whether that's cold, multi-sig, or things that I use. Working on that piece, as well as some stuff on the Lightning Network. So I have a lot of things that I want to bring throughout this journey, but I like to share things that happen in my life, you know, week to week, and some of the things that I learned. But this was a specific thing that I was just talking about this week because I've been sharing that kind of like on socials about the idea of like get on zero. So I wanted to bring it to the actual podcast. You know, with that being said, though, give me some feedback. Let me know how you feel about the idea of getting on zero. Do you think it's something that you will ever adopt? Do you think that I'm just I'm too far going? It's a bit too extreme. And do you understand why I would do something like that? To me, and I saw, you know, I saw the actual CEO of Strike, Jack Mahler. I was watching. He has a podcast too. What's the name of his podcast? Let me get it for you real fast, so I could, you know, again, I'm not a hater. I share everybody's work, but I was listening to his podcast. And he's also someone who's on zero. But the way he described it was kind of funny. It's called Money Matters with Jack Mahlers is his podcast. And he's the CEO of Strike, the company that I actually use. But he was talking about the idea of getting on zero. And he said that people think that it's extreme, but for him, it's like extreme is living on fiat. You literally know you're losing purchasing power and you choose to do so. The other thing about living on Bitcoin, people say, well, what if you get paid one day and it has to drop? Because Bitcoin, you know, is still very volatile. But the thing about stacking over time is I don't have to worry about that because if it's going down, by the time I get paid again or get paid for a service, I'm now buying at a lower price. So over time, I'm still gaining purchasing power. I just zoom out, right? And because I live a lifestyle of stacking sats, I always have multiple months of payments already stored, right? So I can walk away and not work and not get paid, but I'm okay for a long period of time because I'm stacking sats. So therefore, those fluctuations from week to week mean absolutely nothing to me. Over the long period of time, again, I'm gaining value. Even when we dropped from 69,000 and we went down to 2015, whatever it may be, it didn't matter to me, right? Because I'm accumulating the entire time. So now that we ride this wave back up, you can't tell me nothing, man. Like it is what, like I said, the folks that still have the FUD, you can't do this, you can't do that. What do you mean? Like so next week, I'm speaking at an event in Charlotte, North Carolina. I think my speaking event is on the 8th of April. I'll be there from the 8th to 11th. It's a conference in April, real estate valuation conference. So it's called ValTech. It's a valuation technologies conference. But I'll be speaking there at a couple of different speaking engagements throughout that conference. So I had to get a room. It's a Marriott branded hotel, airline tickets, American Airlines, right? And all of these things were paid for with Bitcoin on my end, right? Paid for with Bitcoin. They got their fiat on the back end, right? So again, literally paid for with Bitcoin. And the great thing about Fold and the way I'm able to do that is Fold also gives cash back on purchases. So I don't even use my Amex card no more. Like I don't use it because what's the point? So I'm getting Bitcoin back. And by the way, I've gotten over 10 million Satoshis just from using a Fold card. That's a tenth of a full coin. I don't say that to brag. I say that to say living this lifestyle has been nothing but a bonus for my financial situation. When I get to Charlotte, I'll probably catch an Uber to the thing. I'm going to pay for that in Satoshis and get 3% back in Bitcoin. So now I'm only paying 97% for what anyway, we get deep into another episode. Give me your feedback. What do you think? Do you think I'm too far gone? Do you think it's something that you may be able to adopt? And did you ever think about the idea that you can get on zero, that you can just opt out of the fiat system, the corrupt system? Anyway, appreciate it. Love you guys. We back for episode 9 next week. I'll make sure to record something before I head out of town. Much love to everybody who shared this episode. Shout out to my brother Rich. Rich makes sure he shares every episode of Stack Sats. I see it in various groups all over social media. Much love to you, brother. It is appreciated. And thanks for everybody who comes along this journey. Like I said, as I learn more, I share more. The things that I do know, I'll make sure I bring it all. I have like several outlines from future shows that I want to do. Networks, even networks that I don't use, but I study, but I still don't use them, like Liquid or RootStack. I don't use any of those things. I don't like affinity scams. Like, I once looked into stacks, talked about it on the show, had bought some stacks, got out of that when I realized, like, nah, this is not it. So even those aspects of Bitcoin that I don't agree with, I'll bring that to the show. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. And remember, stack sats or die trying. Peace.